Hasta la vista, baby.
If you like my videos and want to support me on Patreon, please click the link below. Thank you. Licensed video games have been around since the inception of the video arcade. The very first licensed property was Star Trek, which was released in 1972. Video games are usually hit or miss when it comes to quality, with E.T. scraping the bottom of the barrel to the other end of the spectrum, which would have to be Batman Arkham Knight. Today, though, we are going to talk about one of the top-tier licensed properties to ever grace an arcade. It's rare for a blockbuster movie to also have a blockbuster game. No, I'm not talking about Strawberry Shortcake musical matchup. I'm talking about Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Which Terminator 2 star refused to participate in the making of this arcade game? So grab your Uzi and kill all the bad guys, because this is the history of Terminator 2 Judgment Day. The year is 1990, and filming is about to start up on the sequel to the 1984 sci-fi classic, The Terminator. Midway Entertainment was approached about doing a licensed arcade game tie-in to coincide with the theatrical release of the movie. The developers at Midway felt that they could not get a quality game out that quick, so they opted for the same date as the home video release. Midway wanted to do something a bit different though. Rather than do a simple cash-in on a hot property, they wanted to go that extra mile and create something really special. After pioneering the technology of digitizing actors with Mortal Kombat, they wanted to do the same thing with Terminator 2. Since filming was just about to start, they wanted to go on the set and film extra scenes with all of the actors for their arcade game. Of the 4 main actors who were approached about reprising their roles, only Linda Hamilton did not agree. All of the actors were going to get bonus pay for recording extra scenes with Midway, with Arnold, of course, getting the biggest piece. Linda Hamilton wanted the same pay as Arnold, which Midway did not agree with, so stuntwoman Debbie Evans was used in her place. Arnold Schwarzenegger and Edward Furlong recorded a lot of new dialogue for the game. The game also uses digitized clips from the movie spread throughout the game. Not only did the development team for Midway have access to most of the actors and the sets, but they were also able to photograph the exoskeleton along with Skynet weapons and vehicles. In the game, you will fight a silverfish snake-like creature. This was intended for the opening battle of the film, but was cut from the final edit. If you press start with no credits in the machine, Arnold says,
No way, Jose.
Terminator 2 Judgment Day is a 2-player on-rails light gun shooter released in late 1991. The game featured incredibly precise control due to the fact that the guns weren't shooting beams of light, but rather they moved the on-screen target like a mouse moves a mouse pointer. The guns that are fitted on the arcade cabinet are modeled after the real guns that were used in the movie. The plot of the game follows the movie very closely as you take control of the T-800 and attempt to protect John Connor and his mother Sarah Connor from the T-1000 Terminator. Your character moves from left to right, taking out all the enemies while watching out for the innocent soldiers in your fight against Skynet. You have a limited supply of rockets to use, but there are various power-ups all throughout the game, such as smart bombs, grenades, and the power-up that lets you fire your gun at maximum speed. Your Uzi will continually overheat with use, so be sure to shoot the containers of coolant on the levels. As I mentioned, the game is spread across 7 levels, including the first level, which takes place in the year 2029 after Judgment Day has passed. You are attempting to reach a refugee hideout in this level. In the second level, you are traveling through the hideout, destroying the Terminators and protecting the refugees. The third level sees you protecting John Connor as he drives a pickup truck attempting to flee the Terminators and enemy aircraft.
Way to go.
Level 4 sees you invade their facility and destroying its main computer. After this, you are transported back to 1991.
Intruder alert.
Terminated. Let's go.
Level 5 sees you attempt to destroy the Cyberdyne research facility. The amount of equipment destroyed determines whether Cyberdyne's research will continue. This is important if you're going to complete the game. If you fail in your mission to destroy enough of the computer equipment, you will not get the proper ending. Sarah and John are attempting to flee the steel mill in a police SWAT vehicle. You have to fend off the T-1000, who uses both a helicopter and a tanker truck. And finally, level 7 is the final battle with the T-1000. When I walked into my local arcade back in 1991 and saw this beautiful cabinet and heard the digitized sounds of Arnold Schwarzenegger booming throughout, I knew I was witnessing a bona fide classic. The graphics are absolutely beautiful, with the digitized characters popping to life, almost as if you were in the middle of the movie. Midway did an excellent job not only with the actors' representation, but also the models used throughout. This really felt like an extension of the movie. The sound and music are absolutely insane. Loads of brand new speech from Arnold Schwarzenegger and excellent heart-pumping music. The game is a total blast to play, but it's also an absolute quarter muncher. Now, I've played some difficult games in my day, but this one has to be in the top 5. It does get easier with the second player, but for the solo outing,
Good luck. You'll need it.
the arcade game sold like hotcakes. No matter which arcade you went to back in 1991, chances are this game was there front and center. Acclaim Software was in charge of the home conversions, and some of them turned out pretty good.
Machine gun blasting, molten morphing Terminator 2 video game action in G2, the arcade game, and Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Now on Super NES, Genesis, and Game Gear.
The first one we are going to look at is the Game Boy version. If you thought Judgment Day's future was dark and bleak, that's nothing compared to the screen on the original Game Boy. Well, what you are seeing here is the emulated version, which means you can actually see what's going on. For a black and white handheld version, I guess this is okay. The sprites are not that large, but they are detailed. There is no music, and the sound effects are atrocious, even by Game Boy standards. The speed of your movement is just way too slow.
That's what she said.
The Game Gear version is up next, and what a difference a little bit of color makes. The sprites are a bit bigger here than on the Game Boy, with a nice use of color all throughout. Also, we have music this time instead of the horrible sound effects only found in the Game Boy version. The game runs at a decent speed, but the pointer is too slow and clunky. The Master System version looks a little bit better than the Game Gear version, but plays almost identically. Unfortunately, only D-pad support is available, so that means you cannot use the Sega Light Gun. The Sega Genesis version is up next, and it's a pretty good port. The ever awesome 2-player mode is included, and also support for the Sega Menacer Light Gun. The sprites are large and detailed, but what lets it down is the lack of color. The sound effects are decent, but the digitized voices are too scratchy. The Super Nintendo version is the best 16-bit console port. The 2-player mode is included, along with support for the Super Scope Light Gun, as well as the Super Nintendo mouse. The graphics are very close to the arcade game, with an excellent use of color, thanks to the expanded palette of the Super Nintendo. The sound effects and digitized speech are nice and clear. The game runs along at a decent speed, even with lots of action on screen. The MS-DOS version is up next, and honestly, it's only average at best. I was a bit surprised this version wasn't much better, considering how accurate the conversions of Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 were on the PC. The sprites are nice and large and very similar to the arcade game, but the color palette is a bit off. The music is not very good, and there's hardly any digitized voices from the arcade game. You can use the mouse in this game, which does help, but otherwise it's not a very fun experience. And finally, we have the Amiga version, which is the best home computer port available. The sprites are large and detailed with a fair use of color. There are 3 or 4 levels of parallax scrolling, which really adds to the depth and immersion. The music is good, but unfortunately, that's all we get. There are no sound effects. There are also no digitized voices from the game. The speed of the pointer is nice and fast, and you do get to use the mouse to control it. And there you have it, the history of Terminator 2, the arcade game. If you can't find a real cabinet out in the wild, then your best bet is to play it on MAME. Make sure you have a second player though, because the game is insanely fun, but it's also insanely difficult. If you like my videos and want to support me on Patreon, please click the link below. Also, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my content. It's the only way my little channel can grow. Thank you for watching.